Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we're going to jump into PTSD. So, Ashley dropped a really big bomb last time about PTSD and military people. And when she said it, I was like, oh gosh, we got to talk about that because that is too good to not talk about. So, we're going to dive headlong into that. But in case we haven't met, my name is Karen.
And my name is Ashley. And yeah, like you see like PTSD, like especially with military, like play out in movies and different things. And I'm sure like especially in the US, people know someone that's been in the military. Here in Canada, it's very different.
Mm.
I know people that are in the military, but they've never actually gone anywhere. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's very
different
different.
here for sure, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, the thing that just blew my mind from what you said last time was that you had spoken to somebody that had been in the military and that this guy was trained to stay away from his triggers, right? Like on the outside, logically, many people would go, well, yeah, that makes sense. But my problem with that is how many triggers are you going to stay away from? And does that mean you don't get out of your bed in the morning because that triggers you? Like,
Yeah.
that to me does not work. I personally would rather, and we talk about this all the time on this podcast, I would rather rewire my mind so that that is no longer a trigger. And
Mhm.
while that is not an easy process, to me, that makes way more sense than going, I'm just going to stay away from all the things that could possibly trigger me because hell, ice cream could trigger me, right? So, because it's cold. So, I'm going to stay away from ice cream. Like, how far does it go, right? And what happens with our brain is when we stay away from certain things like that, it becomes even more taboo. Like it becomes even worse. We create more stories around a story that maybe the story was good, maybe the story wasn't, but when we really like hold something so far away from us and we're like, I'm never touching that again, we create even more stories that cause even more PTSD, in my opinion, because now you've created something that didn't even really happen. Like it's that whole caught a fish story that was this big and then suddenly it was 10 inches long from 6 inches long, right? Like, and then from there it gets even bigger. Now it's 2 feet long, right? Like it's become this big whopper of a story that you've created all in your head just starting from one trigger, right? And instead, like to me, it's so much better to look at that trigger and go, okay, what might I start thinking if I'm looking at this trigger and thinking, "Oh, that's really scary to me." What might I start thinking every time I think about that trigger, or what could I prepare myself for when that trigger does come up so that when the trigger does inevitably come up because it's going to, what can I start thinking instead of, oh my God, that scares the ever living daylights out of me, right? Like, what can I do differently? And the thing is I think that more of us are walking around with PTSD than we realize. Let's be honest, like, we all have some sort of trauma from childhood, right? Childhood is interesting because our analytical mind is not fully developed. We're living generally in a lower level brainwave, right? So we have our theta, our alpha, and we have our beta. And most of the time, we're living in alpha and theta when we're kids. And those brainwave levels don't allow us to jump into an analytical, logical thinking mind that allow us to go, wait, this is what happened. And as a result of that, this is what happened. As a child, we can get really fanciful and create stories that might not have actually been there. And so now we're staying away from certain things that, why are we staying away from them? Oh, because my mom told me XYZ. And so I'm not going to do that because my mom said this to me. Where an adult, if somebody as an adult said that to you, you'd be like, well, that's silly. Why should I stay away from that thing? Like, there could be some really good things that happen if I try that thing, you know? So But yeah, it's amazing to me because I do think that a lot of us are walking around with PTSD on some level that
Mhm.
was formed as a child. And now we're staying away from things where what if we went headlong into it instead of being so worried about it? What could happen?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and like the biggest thing, like when you're talking about that, like that big story, my son, it would have been one of the first things that we did, like, because I started interacting with my kids in like late winter kind of thing. So there wasn't a lot of things to do. And we lived close to a pool. We went to the pool all the time. And I used to be a lifeguard, so I did lots of swimming. I love the water. And so they got there and they all went to grab life jackets. And I was like, no, we're at a pool. Like you do not need a life jacket. Like I'm a firm believer life jackets are for boats. And that's about it. Because especially for kids learning to swim, it makes it harder for them to learn because they don't learn how their bodies move in water.
Mhm.
So it actually poses more of a risk because kids then think, I can do this when I'm wearing a life jacket. So they just think I can.
Mhm.
And then they get into the water and they can't. But anyways, that's a little tangent. So, I taught them kind of like basics of floating and we had lots of fun. I was always within arm's reach, like I know my limits and that kind of thing. And so they were jumping off like the diving boards into the water and having like the time of their life. No life jackets on. Like I was in there to catch them and help them like push them to swim back to the edge. And so we had done this numerous times in a short period of time. And then the one time we get to the pool, and my middle child, my son, who's 5, is white as a ghost, like just like white as a sheet, and just like dead in fear. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, you haven't been afraid of the pool forever. We've been jumping off the diving board, going down the water slides, like, what's happening? And he says that his bio mom told him that if he goes to the pool and doesn't wear a life jacket, he's going to sink to the bottom and drown and die.
Mhm.
It took me a half an hour to get him to touch the water
Mhm.
because he was so paralyzed in fear.
Mhm.
And it became a thing. And he that day it took us a half an hour just to get him to touch the water. And
Mhm.
then it took us even more time to get him into the water. And he was screaming, like
Mhm.
crying, like full-fledged anxiety attack. And had we not continued to go to the pool and continue to work on it with him, he would be like his bio mom that had one weird incident at the pool and is afraid of water to this day.
Mhm.
And um that's how it builds. It builds and it
Mhm.
builds and it builds. Um, Same idea with their cousin. Their cousin, the one time we were at the pool and he's older now, big, can swim, all the things. And he's like, yeah, I don't really like water slides because the one time I almost drowned and died.
Mhm.
And I was just like, what? Like,
Mhm.
how did that happen? He's like, well, I came down and I went under and I was under the water because kept on like coming down from the water slide and I almost drowned. And I was like, at this pool? And he's like, yeah. So at this specific pool, it's not one of the water slides that goes into a pool.
Mhm.
It's one of the water slides that comes into like a landing strip.
Mhm.
It's like this deep,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And this kid was saying this happened to him when he was like 5 or 6. And your parents have to be with you at that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
And so he told this to his mom, and his mom was like, yeah, that never happened. Like
Mhm.
he never ever got stuck under the water. But his brain perceived that he did. And 5, I think it probably he was 12 at the time, 12, 7 years later, he was still afraid of it
Mhm.
because in his mind the story happened. He never communicated it to anyone and it continued to build and he almost died,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that I see that happen so many times where there's adults that are afraid of swimming and they had this incident where maybe they breathed and the water went up their face, and they thought they were near death.
Mhm.
But our society praises that,
Mhm.
right? Um, I remember after my accident, I would go to the doctor, and all the doctors would tell me how I almost died. All the doctors
Right,
would
yeah.
tell me how it was a miracle, and all the doctors would tell me how this was so close and this was so bad, and they've never seen anything so bad. And I've heard so many other people say those stories that I'm like, this isn't true.
Right.
Like, this is all just like how they talk, you know? Like, this is the worst I've ever seen. Like, no, it's not. Like,
Mhm.
like I don't know if that's a doctor ego thing or they tell it to their patients because it gets their patients hooked, or I don't know. But I'm like, my accident was definitely bad, but definitely not the worst they've ever seen because they've scraped bodies off the ground.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, some of it too is, I do think some of it comes back to, oh, this is the worst I've ever seen. So I'm going to put that under my belt as I saved you kind of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other different
Yeah.
topic to talk about for sure. But yeah, that I think is some of it too, for a doctor to be like, well, I saved you from the worst thing that I've ever seen. Right. Like, and we do tend to exaggerate, right? Like I watch myself even sometimes when I'm telling stories and I'm like, am I exaggerating this or did this really happen? Am I
Yeah.
making this up? And I remember that as a child, I remember having dreams and having a really hard time differentiating the difference between the dream world and the real world. And
Yep.
so some of that created some trauma in and of itself, right? And so you're creating these stories
Mhm.
in your head that aren't necessarily real, but now because your brain believes it's real, you're staying away from something. You're no longer wanting to get triggered by going to the pool, or I don't know, I can't even think of anything right now other than going to the pool, but like you stay away from these things that could be fun, could be enjoyable, but
Yeah.
you have this big whopper of a story that says, "Oh no, I can't do that." And so like this is what blows my mind about that military guy too, because I understand. Well, I don't. Let's be honest. I don't understand what they've been through. I really don't. I've never been in a firepower situation where somebody's shooting at me. Okay? Like let's just put that out there.
Yeah.
However, I do know that I don't want to be afraid in my personal life of things like fireworks because they're loud and they might sound like a firepower thing, right? So for me, I would be like, what might I do so
Yeah.
that this doesn't trigger me so that I feel like I need to run and hide,
Yeah.
right? Because I can't live my life afraid of everything. That's
Mhm.
not living, right? Like if you're in your house and you never leave, that's not living. That's
Yeah.
literally just existing. And I don't know anybody that really, truly down deep wants to do that.
Yeah.
Most of us, I truly believe at our core, want to explore, want to learn, want to grow. And
Mhm.
sometimes life beats us down to the point where we feel like we can't because
Yeah.
it's too scary.
Yeah.
And to me, if we stay there, it's impossible for us to learn and grow and to become our biggest potential, right? The best version of ourselves lies just beyond the thing that we're scared of, right? And so, and that for me, that's so true. Like what I just said, the best version of myself does lie beyond that thing that scares the shit out of me,
Yeah.
right? So, why would I not want to jump headlong into it? Now, I will say that it is okay to let things that scare you be a process instead of going, I need to do this big, scary thing right now. Like, instead of going, I'm going to eat the whole elephant, why not
Mhm.
stair step your way up to
Yeah.
eating the elephant, right? Like, eat it one bite at a time. Don't take it on full force because, yes, that is overwhelming.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when I do this in my life, I can look back and be like, man, do you remember when I was afraid to do that? And now I do it without even thinking about it. Like now I can just walk through my life and that doesn't even bother me, right?
Mhm.
So it's not that in my opinion, it's not that you just go from not doing something to I'm so ready to do it. Like you obviously had to work with your son that was afraid of the water, right? Like you had to work with him. Like, okay, you have to dip in your toes first. Okay, I can dip in my toes. Nothing's going to happen if I dip my toes in. Okay, can you put your legs in, right? Like it's that kind of process. And
Yeah.
the more that we do that, the more that we're rewiring our brain. Like it is a stair step effect. And I noticed this with myself with anything that I'm choosing to rewire my brain with. Instead of going, so for example, like money's a really big one for a lot of people, right? Instead of thinking every day, I'm a millionaire, but you've never made $1,000 in your life, why not stair step and go, okay, like I've never made $1,000. Let me focus on that first. And so you're kind of dipping your toe in, right? You're doing that. Like you're rewiring your brain that it is possible. And then you realize, okay, I hit $1,000, right? So what if I could hit $2,000? And then it starts to get easier because you've been practicing it over and over again. And so before you know it, you've stair stepped your way to be a millionaire. Now, that to me is way more beneficial for somebody than if somebody just wakes up a millionaire because now they don't know how they did it. They can't replicate it. They don't know the steps that they did in order to rewire their brain in order to create that kind of wealth in their life, right? And to me, the people that stair step like that, that understand what your brain needs to do and how to rewire it, and it sometimes takes time, sometimes it doesn't have to. But when you are doing that stair step by stair step, now you can replicate it over and over and over again. And so now you can actually keep your wealth too, because you've created the thought processes and you've rewired it to the point where that's just natural for you, right? So it's the same thing with trauma, PTSD. Like it is a stair stepping effect. And I literally, probably until the day I die, will say this, like life is a process and let it be a process instead of feeling like it has to be all done at once. Like you don't have to understand why something's happening. You can just go, okay, like it's a process. I'll get there eventually. And that's okay. Like that's a really healthy mindset to have too.
Well, and like when I had my accident, like I talked on the last podcast about some of the PTSD I had. Um, and like that's what I did. Like I had Dr. Caroline Leaf's book to rewire your brain, but I was afraid to walk on like the sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a lot.
Yeah, it's
And
hard.
so yeah, like if I would have just like went back to the road that I had got hit on and decided to walk across that street,
All at once.
like a fucking wreck, and it would have wired that trauma in deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why like taking it one step at a time is way more important, because sometimes you can jump off the deep end, but oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
it's going to throw you into a place that you have another anxiety attack, another episode, and then you're wiring that in deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I just started doing little things. Like I just go for walks, and um I started walking across the street. Like as silly as that sounds, I had trauma about walking across streets.
Mm-hmm.
Even to this day, like if I am walking across the street and a car's coming towards me, sometimes I do freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Um but it doesn't have that same hold on me. Like that's like more of a like a body reaction. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
have like the panic in my mind. But yeah, it's really interesting how our body and our mind are so connected but also so separate in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, it's because our body at a certain point holds on to the trauma and remembers. And so the body is just trying at an evolutionary level, it's just trying to protect itself. Right. So, and it's that deep subconscious thing that's happening in our mind that we don't even like, we don't know it's happening. It's just so connected to what happened in the past.
yeah. Yeah, and that was like the thing with so that friend of mine and with my counselor. So with my accident, I had to see psychologists and psychiatrists and all the things. I was in the hospital for a tertiary program for a year. Um, and so in that, they would all tell me all the time, you have to accept this as your new normal. Like my new normal was my like chronic pain. My new normal was my brain injury. My new normal was my PTSD. And I had to accept all those things and learn to live with them. So learn to live with the triggers of my PTSD. So it was very similar to what my friend was saying. And we were talking and about how both of us had received this advice. And I thankfully, I don't know how, but I thankfully had figured out that it wasn't going to work for me, and I was taking those progression steps like you talked about to work through the triggers. He wasn't there yet, but he was more in the avoidance stage, and he was saying that while he was following the advice that they were giving him of how to avoid, he felt like it was getting worse,
Mm-hmm.
even though he hadn't had any new triggers or anything that had triggered him recently. He still felt like it was getting worse. And he's like, it doesn't make sense to me. And he kept on thinking there has to be a better way. And so then when I shared with him what I was doing, he was like, yeah, that makes way more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he started doing that too, and it opened up a lot of freedom for him.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I think that's also comes along the lines with the doctors want like that tool belt of like, I solved this problem, but also they want you as their customer. So
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah.
if I have a condition, it's like, oh my gosh, you're the worst I've ever seen. You need this,
Yeah.
especially in the US where everything is paid,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, you need this surgery. You're the worst I've ever seen. You have to have this surgery.
Right.
Like, yeah, they want you in their operating room so they make the buck.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, like they want me as their client to counsel me through my PTSD and how to live with it. Because like living with pain is not fun.
No. Yeah.
PTSD is not fun. Like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking need a counselor to get through that.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, for the most part, I've been able to actually heal myself and heal my body. And they don't want to teach you how to do that. They
Right.
lose all the clientele that way.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you could go take these supplements, go to the gym, change your life and avoid this surgery altogether, 100%. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you that you're the worst they've ever seen.
Right.
And they're going
So,
to dig into that.
so some of it too, and I'm speaking from experience as somebody in healthcare.
Yeah,
So I understand this side of it too. Some of it has to do with the doctor's ignorance as well, right?
for sure. Yeah,
Because their belief system says that medicine is the only way to heal.
yeah,
That's what they've been trained in. That's what they understand. They don't understand the mind body connection. Most of them have never heard anything like
yeah,
this at all. Like many doctors are walking through life saying, if it's not written down in a research journal and I haven't read about it, then it's not possible, right? Like that is the method that they're operating under. And so I personally think that needs to change 100%, but that is also a process, right? Like that doesn't just happen overnight where everybody wakes up and goes, "Oh, wait a minute. The mind body connection is bigger than anything," right? Like all of us have on some level been brainwashed into thinking that we need something outside of us in order to heal ourselves. And that might be really hard to hear and understand, but you don't need anything outside of yourself. Your body and your mind are literally self-healing. We
yeah,
can create that self-healing. I mean, we cut ourselves and we heal. Our
yeah,
body instinctively knows how to do that.
yeah,
It's the same thing with anything that's going on with our body. Our body knows how to heal.
yeah.
But what are the belief patterns that keep us
Hmm.
from having that healing that we want? And those
Yeah,
belief patterns run deep, right? Like it's not like I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I can never heal from XYZ disease. Like nobody's saying that on a conscious level. It's
yeah,
literally been programmed into us since we were children, right? Like programming happens as children, and mom tells us that, oh, you can heal from this thing, but you can't heal from that thing, right?
yeah,
Like it was meant to be helpful, but now it's turned into a limitation
yeah,
that we don't even realize is a limitation until our brain is opened up to a possibility of, I mean, the first time I heard somebody healing themselves from things like cancer, I was like, is that real? Could that really happen? But then the more that you spend time with people, more than one person that's healed themselves from cancer, you start to go, wait a minute, I think my belief system is fucked up. I think I had it wrong. I think
yeah,
I didn't even realize that there was a possibility out there. Now that you've spent time with people that have healed themselves, you start to create this belief system in yourself that it is possible. And so we talk about this all the time on this podcast too. Like If you want wealth, if you want healing, if you want, I don't care what you want to put in there, right? If you want something, spend time with somebody that's already done what you want to do.
Yeah.
That to me is the best way of learning because you have things in your brain called mirror neurons. You are going to mirror what they do without even knowing it. How
Yeah.
many times have you spent time with somebody and by the end of the day you're talking like them and you sound like them? I
Yeah.
mean that's literally mirror neurons at their best, right? As a child, we have those mirror neurons even more abundantly, right? So we're literally soaking up everything around us.
Yeah.
And then as adult, we're still doing that too. So if you want something in your life, then you gotta spend time, listen to people, spend time with people, read about people that already have what you want.
Yeah.
And really watch them on a conscious and a subconscious level because your subconscious mind is picking up on a lot of things. That's
Yeah.
why for me, I will always till the day I die be watching. If somebody's telling me to do something, I'm going to watch and see if you're doing it yourself. Because if
Mhm.
you're not doing it yourself, I don't want what you're talking about because it's just a philosophy for
Yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
not your truth. It's
Yeah.
just a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. This is just your philosophy that you probably have watched other people
Mhm.
experience this kind of thing. But if you are just saying to do it, but you're not actually doing it, I can't really believe you because I don't want my mirror neurons to get confused by you saying to do something, but you're not actually doing it. So for me, that's a hard no. Whenever I've had many business or mentors through the years, right? Not business partners, but mentors through the years that if I'm watching you and you're getting this amount of success, I'm going to most likely get the same amount of success if I keep watching what you're doing. So at that point, I have to ask myself, is this a mentor that I want to stick with? Or is there somebody else that's actually getting what I want that I want to follow in their footsteps?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like I have a little bit of a different perspective there. I think that there's people that have are meant to be the teachers, not the doers. Like Napoleon Hill, for example, he's a teacher. He wasn't a doer, you know. Um,
He
he
did do stuff though.
he
So I
did.
think at a
Yeah.
certain point, you really do. There is a point where you really have to do it too.
Yeah.
So,
And so like I think about some of my mentors, some of them are excelling and they're the top of the top, right? And other ones are not, but they've helped the top of the top get where they are.
mm,
And that's how I feel like Napoleon Hill is. Napoleon Hill to me, I love his two books, like Think and Grow Rich and Outwitting the Devil. Love those books. Um, when you read Outwitting the Devil, it really puts into perspective what his life was like. And he was a scared coward, in
mm,
my opinion, for most of his life, and not a man like that I would value. You know what I mean? But he did some great things with faith and with his teachings. But he was never Henry Ford. He was never a Rockefeller, you know. He never did amazing things, even though his book is considered like gold when it comes to like entrepreneurship and creating wealth for yourself. He wasn't that guy, but he helped people get there with his teachings, and he learned from those people. And so I think I agree with what you're saying in the sense that like I do want to see that authenticness in and have it flow. Um, but we're all humans
mm,
and we all have a purpose, and some of us, our purpose is more teaching. I know for myself, I'm a better teacher than I am a doer. I know the philosophies and the principles better than I am at implementing them in my own life. But I'm at the conscious competence part, you know, I'm not at the unconscious competence part.
mm,
Um, but yeah, and that's where it's all this part of the process. And the only reason I'm saying this is I don't want people to throw the baby out with the bathwater, you
mm.
know? there can be some pretty fucking messed up people. And like this is the image that comes to my mind right now. And I don't know Elon Musk, obviously. I don't know much about him because I don't really care too much about Tesla or anything that he's like is I'm not a nerd in that way. But he's doing pretty good. He's the richest man in the world, you know? But he has 13 children ra with random females. Like, and to me, that strikes me as something an unsuccessful person would do, you know? But obviously, he's having success in his own arena. And that's where, yeah, I don't think we're ever going to find someone that what they teach is successful in every area of their life.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's a
no.
random
Yeah.
rant.
No, that to me, it's impossible in my opinion. Maybe I need to open my limitations, but to me, I
Yeah.
don't think that we can have it all together in all different areas, right? So for me, this is just what I see in my own business. When I have followed people that have mediocre success, I have their same level of success. But when I follow people that have had really good success, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm mirroring what they're doing, right? So, and this success could be money, the success could be health, the success could be anything that you want to put in there, relationships, it doesn't matter. But to me, that is so important because I have had mentors in the past where I'm like, I'm getting their same level of success because this is what they know. This is what
Mhm.
they understand. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think at a certain point, it's really healthy to maybe Napoleon Hill needed to do this. Like, look at yourself and go, okay, I have the information. I know what I
Yeah.
need to do. Maybe instead, I need to find the right person that can show me how to actually get the do done, right? Like actually do the do and actually experience that maybe money success that I'm looking for, right? Like when I look at my life, that has always been really evident when I'm like, oh, I'm working with a mentor that's not actually had six-figure success or multimillionaire success, right? And it shows. So for me, I do think that there's a point where we can outgrow our mentors too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, well, because I mean, one of my mentors was my business partner, and I had to look at her and be like, okay, so I'm having similar success as her because I'm doing the same things that she's doing. And so, yeah, there's something wrong here. So I think I need to kind of move on and kind of like reconsider my life and who I'm actually connecting myself with. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like I've shifted from mentors to mentors depending on what I needed at that
Yeah.
stage of life. And not always have I outgrown them. But sometimes I just need a different voice at
Yeah.
that time. And
Yeah.
then there's the times where I do outgrow them. And it's interesting to then go back and have like relationship conversations with them. And it's like, oh wow, like it's interesting how much this dynamic has changed.
Yeah.
But that's like you said, everything is a process, and we're all moving through it in different ways at different times, and that's totally fine. Even like thinking about my partner, like the person he was like when I met him is very, very different than the person he is today. And like just thinking about our parenting style specifically, um, his parents were very authoritarian, very physical, not great. And my parents were not like that. My parents were different. And when I came into the picture, him and his ex were both very authoritarian. Like very like punishment based,
Mm.
very discipline orientated. And I was like, no. And so I started more of that like gentle parenting and brought that in more. And then there's times where we'll like swap and he'll be more of the gentle parent and I'll be more discipline based. Neither of us, thank God, are authoritarian or punishment based anymore. I don't think I ever was. But then there'll be times where I'll be the gentle parent and he'll be more discipline based. And it's funny to watch those dynamics switch.
Mhm.
And it's all a process. And we're switching because of our inner child, right?
Mhm.
So when they do something, like when my kids do something that I would have been disciplined for, I discipline my kids.
Mhm.
And when they do something that my partner would have been disciplined for, but in awful ways, he disciplines them in more of a gentle, normal way.
Mhm.
And then, but we're usually completely opposite because our parents were completely opposite. So it's funny as we move through those processes. It's always an evolution, and it's always ever changing.
Yeah, it's crazy how formative those first few years of our life are
I
in
know.
who we become, because you kind of ask yourself, like, okay, am I who I am because I was nurtured to be this way, or am I who I am because like the nature said I needed to be this way? It's that whole nature versus nurture, and that's a big question. Like, if I was born into a different situation, would I be who I show the world to be today, right? Like, it's weird to think about that kind of thing.
Well, I think there's definitely certain things that we chose.
Hmm.
And then, like for me, I've always been very independent and very confident. But then there's times where trauma has come into my life where I become very codependent. And so again, it's a process, it's ebbing and flowing. And so I know there's aspects of me where I can be like, yeah, that I was like that from birth. Like that was
Hmm.
just me. And there's other things where I'm like, yeah, that's completely situational, or that's completely inner child trauma, and based on my childhood. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we could go on for that with that one for days, and maybe we
Yeah.
do. But I think this is a really great place to kind of cut off for today. So, friends, if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let us know in the comment what your thoughts are. And then if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead, give us a 5-star. Let us know once again what your comments are. And with that, we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. See everyone next time. Thanks so much for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue hanging out with us, and don't forget to subscribe.